I remember all of the adrenaline, all of the begging them to save him stopped. And I remember in that moment, I thought, oh my God, this can't happen. I'm a mother. I'm a wife. I have a 4-year-old at home who's expecting me to come home with her dad. And it was done.
Every story has a turning point, a moment when everything shifts. Here on Hope Comes to Visit, we hold space for those moments, the messy middles, the sacred breakthroughs, and the quiet strength that carries us forward. I'm Danielle Smith, and I'm really excited you're here with us today. Today's guest isn't just visiting us with hope, but the courage and tenacity to evolve and keep faith through some extremely tough challenges. My friend, Dr. Ashley Wellman, is a criminologist specializing in cold case homicides, sexual assault, and victimology. She spent her career as a professor of criminology researching and working with families impacted by violent crime. In 2018, Ashley's life suddenly changed when her husband suddenly passed away. In her grief, she wrote a book for her daughter, which paved the way to a next chapter. In 2021, this first book inspired her move to Eureka Springs, Arkansas, and opened her own retail gallery, Amused Fine Art and Extraordinary Books, where you'll find her growing collection of children's books and whimsical artwork by her illustrators. Above all, Ashley considered herself her greatest role to be mom. Let's take a quick moment to thank the people that support and sponsor the podcast. When life takes an unexpected turn, you deserve someone who will stand beside you. St. Louis attorney Chris Dully offers experienced one-on-one legal defense. Call 314-384-4000 or 314-DUI-HELP, or you can visit dullylawfirm.com. That's D-U-L-L-E lawfirm.com for a free consultation. Ashley, thank you so much for being here. I cannot begin to tell you what a joy it is to have you here. When I thought about having this podcast, you were one of the very first people that popped to mind.
Well, thank you, Danielle. This is like rejoining a sister. I'm incredibly honored and proud to be here. And it's so impactful. I can't wait to tell your listeners about how we connected, what we've both been through, and how it really has defined the women that we are today. Thank you for having me as one of your first guests on your podcast. That's so exciting.
You are such a treasure. I want to give listeners a little bit of background because I think that not only is your story extraordinary, but there is a beauty and a kismet in how we connected. So, as people know, I lost someone who was extremely important to me coming up on 2 years ago. Marty and I took one vacation together and we went down to Eureka Springs. We stumbled into your darling store. And at that time, we sat and chatted with you and Rebel at the time, and we'll talk about Rebel in a minute. And we learned a little bit about your story, how you had lost your husband and you had written a children's book to get through that stage of grief with your daughter. I did not know after chatting with you how significant you would end up being in my life. When I lost Marty, one of the things that I was told was that I should pay attention to the signs and the moments that popped up. If I was hit by a memory, I should sit in it. Less than a month after Marty died, I had his cell phone next to me and his phone had a notification. It popped up with a notification. And that notification was a compilation of videos and pictures from our time in Eureka Springs. And I thought, why am I supposed to sit in this? Because you and I had not spoken since we left Eureka Springs. Mm-hmm. And I instantly was hit by this beautiful memory of you and the time we talked and what you had been through. And I knew I was supposed to reach out to you. I knew that you would be a light in my journey of grief. Less than 10 minutes after I messaged you, you responded. So I want to make that connection for our listeners. And then I want to go back to your story and we will come back to that connection afterwards. But I wanted to lay that groundwork because not only is your story powerful, I get chills talking about the connection I feel to you.
I already started crying a little bit. I went, oh, not yet. We haven't.
Because you ended up being one of the people who truly helped me to live through that grief. And there was a time when I didn't think that I could. So thank you. Now, that's a little bit of my diatribe on that. But I want to start with who you are and how you ended up in Eureka Springs. And you have so many titles. One of the things I didn't mention that we first talked about was you're a professor at Ole Miss. My daughter goes to Ole Miss. And I thought, who is this woman and why am I supposed to know her just from the onset? So tell everybody how magical you are.
Oh, well, I'll try. Let's see. It's interesting because if you had asked me, every stage of my life, who are you? Our answer changes and it's allowed to change, which is something that I think has been one of my biggest breakthroughs as a woman of faith, as a mother, as a wife. In 2018, when Buddy had a sudden pulmonary embolism, I was Dr. Ashley Wellman. That was my identity. It was my career. He had been holding my hand since I graduated with my PhD. We were both fighting to make sure that my career is the one that kind of supported our family. We had a baby girl at home, Reagan, who at the time was 4. And I remember, I'll even back up further than that. I was driven from the time I was a kid to be an FBI agent. Okay, I am not an FBI agent to spoil everything for everybody. But from a little girl, I had my little manual. I knew that I couldn't be around my friends who were doing things they shouldn't have been. And that was my goal. I had this pursuit of I'm going to be in this field of criminal justice. And I ended up taking a turn in about 2008. I was working with a cold case unit while I was in grad school. And a mom said, I just want to know what the expletive happened to my daughter. Her daughter had been murdered about a decade earlier. I was a grad student organizing case files in a cold case unit. So I had zero business helping this poor mom. And the detective said, go outside and talk to this mother. And I thought, who's he talking to?
Right. You want me, a grad student, to go talk to a grieving mother of 10 years.
I'm a kid. Yes. I was a kid at the time, right? All you 25-year-olds, I was a kid. And what I did is I went outside and I was just a human with her. And we talked about her daughter. And at the end of about 4 hours, I remember telling her, I'm so sorry that I couldn't help you. We don't have much in her case. There's not much for us to go on, but her name is known. We know who Elizabeth is. And thank you for sharing with me today. And she just said, see right there, you did help me. That's what I came for, is for someone to say her name, to hear her name. And at the time, Danielle, this kind of links into what you were saying in the intro. I didn't know grief. I didn't know trauma. And so the way I healed from that is I would get in my car and thank God that my life didn't know that kind of pain. Thank you, God, that when I hold people's hands throughout my career, that ended up being the focus, right? Holding the hands of the family members impacted by crime. Thank you for not allowing me to know that pain. Well, fast forward a couple of years, Buddy's alive. We're having a beautiful little family. We had Reagan, no problems. And then we suffered 4 miscarriages after Reagan. We very much wanted a second child. I'm a planner. So
I'm shocked to hear that. I had no idea that
no clue my type A personality, right?
And that our personalities could coincide that way.
Well, so I had planned out every step of my life and we knew we were going to have a second child. Well, clearly that was not working for us. And so we lost our 4th child. And I remember each of those losses had its own grief, right? It was a horrific trauma. It was anger. It was confusion. It was anger with my faith, all kinds of things. And Buddy said, let's just stop. let's shift our lives. Let's pursue a new place for you to have your career. Let's just change some things. And then when we get settled, we will try again.
Visit. Yep.
Yeah, we'll try again. So that took us to 2018. We pack up. I actually stepped quite back in my career to get us to a new location. And we had moved to Fort Worth, Texas. We're rocking and rolling the day before I started my job at TCU. So we're without family. We're in the middle of the country. Buddy had a pulmonary embolism and was holding our little girl. He fell down in our house and Reagan just started screaming, help my dad, help my dad. And she's 4 at the time. And I remember thinking, I don't know how to help your dad. And one of my biggest regrets is I couldn't help her in the moment because I'm so focused on helping her dad. And so I can still hear her little scream begging me to help her dad. And I'm on the phone with 911. I get to the hospital. We're trying to resuscitate him. And eventually the doctor says, Ashley, you need to stop. And I remember the anger I felt towards her of like, who are you? Right. And she was like, he's been without oxygen for at least 45 minutes. And if I brought him back, if we can get him back, you will never talk to him again. He won't have brain function. And I said, then stop. And I remember all of the adrenaline, all of the begging them to save him stopped. And I remember in that moment, I thought, oh my God, this can't happen. I'm a mother. I'm a wife. I have a 4-year-old at home who's expecting me to come home with her dad. And it was done. So all these things that I had been building my life to be, in a minute, I'm walking out of a hospital trying to figure out in the 15 minutes home, how do you tell a child her dad is deceased? And
went from a full plan.
Yes.
We went from one moment of home, husband, child to what do I do now? Like everything has changed. Everything is shifted. And what do I do next?
That's right. And I remember in the moment, they allowed me to see him before they took him away. And I remember sitting there with him and I said, I do not know, and I meant it. I do not know why God left me here and took you. If I could switch, I would do it in a heartbeat because he was so patient and loving and gentle. He was Reagan's world. And I thought, why did you take him? And so I remember that. And I remember saying, I don't know why he left me, but I promise you one thing. I will try to make her life as magical and good as you would have done. And I told him, I said, I don't know that I'm going to be able to do it perfect, but I promise you that. And I remember giving him a kiss on the cheek, and then I could feel him leave his body.
Isn't that amazing? Like, I know what you're talking about.
I could feel him leave. Like he passed through me. And at that moment, I no longer wanted to be in that room with him. It wasn't him anymore. And so that started that, okay, this is real. And like I told him, I don't know why it was you and not me. And I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to make Reagan's life magical. And that's when I went home, and instantly, honestly, my first thought was, I'm good at being Dr. Ashley Wellman. That's what I'm good at. And so my career, I remember writing my colleagues and saying, I'm going to come, I'm starting the first day of school tomorrow. I'm going to proctor the exam on, give a quiz on Friday. And my colleagues were like, what are you?
You are out of your mind. Let us help you make that decision.
Yes. AKA you're not doing any of that.
Right.
And then it got scary, Danielle, where life and control started feeling like it was being taken away from me. And all of the things that I felt defined who is Ashley started to go away, including my career and what I thought was what made me somebody.
What made you who you were.
Yes. Yes. And today, I'll tell you honestly, what was that, 7 years ago? Today, I still grapple with that. And I'll tell you why later down the show. But I started to step back and I said, all these are earthly things. And this is not something that I have mastered by any means. But all of these things, titles, your finances, your status and labels, and all the things that we strive for and we're told make us somebody, they don't matter. They can change every 2 seconds, right? Which I never thought. Who's 44 and 34? I was 34. Who's thinking about burying their husband? No one. No one. We're having a baby in a few minutes, right? We're going to rebuild a life together. And I didn't just lose Buddy that day. I lost a partner. I lost a father to my daughter, but I also lost all those little things.
You lost your future. You lost what you had planned.
All of it.
You lost the who's walking her down the aisle, and you lost who's playing t-ball with her, and you lost Christmas. I get it. You lost everything that you had planned, all of your expectations for what was supposed to be.
And I'm a planner. I had controlled for that. And I made sure that I controlled for that. I didn't do certain things. I didn't engage in risky behaviors. Like my whole life, I made sure that I controlled to be protected. And
so
I wasn't.
It's interesting. I have interviewed another guest of mine wrote a book called The Gift of Maybe because her addiction was to certainty. So I feel like
I need to read her book.
Right. So I feel like this is where I say to anyone who struggles the way you and I do with needing to know what comes next or thinking, now what? Everything that I had planned just fell apart, and grappling with it, learning the beauty of maybe, right? Not necessarily a silver lining, but recognizing that sometimes you can be okay. Yes. Even though your left turn, you thought you were going to go right and you went left instead, because this is where we end up right where we are right here, right now. And there is beauty in your evolution. Now, it's taken you a while to get there. But so how did you make, like, what was the next jump? Because you're grappling with the everything I knew.
It was bad.
Upside down.
It was bad. My world was black and white. So this sounds crazy, but like my favorite movie is The Wizard of Oz. Okay. So I almost felt like Dorothy in pre-Kansas, right? When she's just existing, trying to run away almost from her problems. And my friend said, you know what you should do? You should do something really magical for Reagan and you should write her something. And I thought, I can barely brush my teeth and put my pants on and make sure she is healthy and we're in therapy and we're doing all these things. It took every ounce I had to literally get up and function like the mother she needed. And
sure. Let me be super mom. Good idea.
Let me be creative too when I feel dead inside. And so I did. In the car, I actually started taking my cell phone and telling myself stories of things that I wanted to tell her. And then I thought about the fact that, remember, I'm a criminologist. And so I had this skeleton sitting on my desk in my office. And my daughter at age 2, so this is when Buddy's alive, adopts him. That's her friend Fresno. And she said, I'm going to take care of him. You can't have him. And I remember looking at Buddy and saying, do we let her take this, skeleton that's bigger than her and walk around? He's like, yeah, you're weird. Let her be weird. I thought, yeah, I am weird. Okay. And so she had this, that. Yeah, I'll embrace it and let her embrace it. And so she had this skeleton. And I thought, oh my gosh, Fresno would be the perfect tie-in for her, right? She had told me I'm always going to be different now because my dad died. And I remember sitting during that conversation and I said, yes. And it's going to be a blessing in the long run for the woman you become. And I meant it, that as hard as it is, and on days where in moments you don't understand why, and you're mad and you don't want to keep going, that because of our loss, we were going to make sure there were beautiful, magical moments in our life that we could use to help others is really what I thought. And for Reagan, I remember her saying, okay, well, she's become a very empathetic, very kind, loving person. I think because of that, she knows what it means to hurt. And so I got in the car. One day I wrote this book in the car. My friend Fresno is the one it ends up becoming. And I told a colleague and he said, well, my son's going to illustrate this book for you. And I thought, well, this was just a story to tell her. And then Reagan said to me one day, she said, you're smiling when you create, when you're writing. This is a 4-year-old.
Oh.
And I went, well, I don't smile much right now.
Do you know how important it is that you listened to all of the tiny nudges? I don't know that we listen to ourselves enough. And you listened to the I'm weird, she's weird. Okay, that's fine. You listened to the okay, so she's paying attention to Fresno. You listened to the my son will illustrate that for you. And then you hear the 4-year-old say, well, you're smiling when you do that. And you think, maybe I'm supposed to do this.
Yes. In the craziest, weirdest way, right? That I don't think it was always Reagan talking to me either. There were nights where we would lay in bed and she would say, we're going to be okay. He's not far away, and you smile when you create. She would just talk to me, Mom, you're wonderful. You're doing a great job. This is a baby who's also grieving. And so I would always be like, okay, buddy, I hear you. I really feel like he spoke to me.
I am 100% sure there is not an ounce of honey that I will tell you that in the depths of my grief, the signs were truly the only piece that carried me through.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up asking my grief therapist at one point, and I said, how do I know it's real, that it's really happening? And she looked at me and she said, do you feel something when it happens? And I said, absolutely. She said, then it's real.
Amen.
I said, because you know what? No one is going to be able to tell you that it's not happening. And you will feel. It's not just you just randomly saying, oh, look, I saw a blue ball outside. That must be, right? It's moments would be incredibly significant, and story for another day, but you and I could go back and forth on all of those little things that happen. And 100% when she has those things and she pulls him out of the blue and you say, oh yeah, he's here right now.
Yep. That's my husband. That's not my baby.
Right.
But she told me, she was like, you smile when you create. And I thought, she's right. I started just like Dorothy when she started to get into Oz, and the colors come back and the sounds come back and all these things. I started to walk across campus and I would be writing and I could hear, this sounds crazy, hear colors and see sounds and all the things that don't make any sense in my head. I started to come alive again. And so there was joy in that. And when a friend challenged me one day, she said, you took this risk. You're working on your first children's book. What if you just quit your job and chase this creative dream somewhere? And I said, one, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. I've been working for, yes, thanks so much. Come again. But I had been working for 15 years towards my career as a criminologist, as a professor. And I had just poured everything I was into that. I was stable and I was alone. And so I thought, if I literally took a risk on something creative, I put both of us in jeopardy. I lose what I've been working towards. And then COVID hit. We started to get the book put together. And she teased me again one day. She's like, I know you don't have the cojones to do that, but if you did. And I said, well, what would I even do? She said, I don't know. Just take the book and maybe Zach's art and just make something out of it. And I thought, okay. So I sat back on that and I said, challenge accepted. Another friend said,
say that sounded kind of like a gauntlet being thrown down, and I struggle to not step up to things like that.
Yes, please.
Tell me I can't. Tell me I can't, and I guess I must.
And here I come. And so a friend said, check out Eureka Springs. You should go to Eureka Springs. And I did. I drove into Eureka Springs from Fort Worth, Texas. I had never been in Arkansas. I thought, why the heck would I ever move to Arkansas?
I understand that.
Mm-hmm. And when I drove in, I saw this little shop and I looked at Reagan. I said, you want to go on an adventure with me? And she thought, yeah, sure. And she and I ended up opening on Buddy's birthday, Amused Fine Art and Extraordinary Books, on May 21st of 2021 with one children's book. And that was my friend Fresno, written for her, and Zach Kincaid's art. So Thomas Kincaid's nephew had all of his art in the gallery, but it was basic. It was empty. There wasn't much to sell. And I moved, I quit my job as a college professor, became an adjunct for Ole Miss to keep my foot in. But that was it. It was Reagan and I here in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, and we were starting over.
All over. So then what?
Okay. So I have always had this fantasy of owning a church and building a church house, right? That's just this weird I'm weird. And so it was this idea in my head. And I thought, I'm already doing stupid, crazy things and being risky and figuring things out. So a church came available in a little town around the corner from us. That was a huge church. In the beginning, I thought, okay, I'm going to buy that church and I'm going to turn it into a writer's artist colony. That was kind of my dream. And I thought I could have artists in to be in the gallery, all of these ideas. So I buy the church. The church is from 1893 and it looks like it. And so I hired a young man named Rebel Howard, and I asked him to be my contractor on the project and help me come in and remodel the house. And I remember that he walked in and was talking to me, and I had a girlfriend with me at the time. And I said, man, he was sitting there talking about his child. He was sitting there talking to me about all the things in his life, his children, all of the things in his life. And I said, he's going to make a great husband and father to somebody one day. And that was it. It just walked off. I gave him a big hug and we started going back and forth and planning out this church. Ended up being in a wedding together. And I remember being a little sad that I was not paired with him. I was a bridesmaid. He was a groomsman. And I remember being a little bummed that I wasn't walking in the aisle with him because I didn't know many people at the wedding. And he was my buddy there because we worked together. And about a month later, I said, hey, Rebel, do you want to come over and watch a movie with me just as a friend? Just as a friend. And he laughed. And
Did you clarify it like that?
Oh, yeah. And I made sure. I was very, very stubborn. I would meet him outside with checks. He did not come in my home. All these things, like I am professional.
Was that a boundary you were setting because of Buddy, because of Reagan, because you didn't feel ready to go down that road? Because you were sensing that you had an attraction to this man?
Maybe all the above.
All of the above?
Yeah. And I had also had a couple people who had come in and out of my life that, grief's weird. You're lonely. And so I had a couple people that I had, invited into my life, and they ended up very much hurting me and disappointing me and taking advantage almost of my vulnerability at the time. And so I had to learn pretty quick, okay, clearly, yes, the emotional component's there, which is, again, an earthly thing, right, that you're feeling. And then I thought spiritually, all you're doing is hurting yourself. Right. And so I almost had put up a boundary, and in many ways, honestly, that boundary hasn't fully come down. And so it was, I'm not going to be hurt again. It's that control thing. I'm not going to be hurt again. That has not worked out. I've been hurt many times, even with the beautiful things going on. But I just thought, I'm not going to put myself out there right now. And I remember the night we watched the movie, he said, hey, can I said, we're going to be friends. That's it. Like, you're going to come over as a friend. And he started laughing and he said, I can pretend to be your friend, but I'm just going to be honest. I would love to be more than your friend. So, and I started laughing. I was like, well, that's not going to happen. It happened. I am now married to Rebel. And we have other beautiful blessings. We actually just celebrated my son's 9-month little celebration. So I have a baby boy now and a beautiful bonus daughter who's 11, like Reagan. And so I have a little family with this man that I told him I would only be his friend.
Congratulations on every single level. It's first of all, I have to point out, when you first introduced me to Rebel, my first thought was Ole Miss Rebels. You have a man named Rebel, which I just can't get over how much I love that. Because obviously I'm attached to Ole Miss through my daughter. But there was such grief wasn't even on my radar when I met you, right? And I was so in awe of you and your energy and your heart and your ability to triumph, not over, but through what clearly had been very difficult circumstances. And it was amazing to me that you had taken these risks, that you had moved to Eureka Springs, but that your heart goal had been, how do I protect my child? Mm-hmm. How do I her grief is really important. And how do I help her through this process? And I had no idea at that time that part of your gift, would also be helping me through mine. Circling back to you saying to Reagan that this experience is going to be a blessing for the woman she would be. Wow, what a blessing it is for the woman you are.
It's hard because it's, I told you yesterday on the phone, we had gotten a chance to talk just briefly. And I said, I'm sorry that you have to know this pain. And you had this amazing response that, well, I'm grateful for it in many ways. And I can understand that. But I still, and this is crazy because I'm a woman of faith, right? And someone who my faith is what really carried me through my entire life, to be honest. Even in the moments where I wasn't the daughter of the king that I should have been, in the moments that I didn't ask him when I needed his help, and I turned my back on, really being open to my spirituality and things like that. He always was there, and he always showed up, and he was always protecting me. And so, I still struggle some days and some moments where I say, I still don't know why that had to happen. I'll never know that. I'll never know why my daughter's heart is forever missing a piece of it, and why my life is forever missing a piece of it. But and why the attacks, like I almost think the closer I get to Jesus Christ, the stronger the attacks come in life. And so it's those kinds of things of like, why? And that's hard to understand, that that's not for our brains and hearts to know, that we're either all in and believing or we're not. And so I struggle sometimes where I say, thank you for the gifts that I have. Thank you for allowing me to be the woman I am. And without Buddy's death, I know I wouldn't be her. I wouldn't be the Ashley I am today, which honestly, my main focus is protecting my family. That's who I am. I'm a mama bear. You asked me what I am first. I'm a mama bear. Right. And it's not just my daughter. I've learned that my husband came into a relationship with his own grief and trauma. And my daughter has her own grief and trauma. And I have my own grief and trauma. And that it takes a whole family unit to work together and to try to understand and support one another. That's the phase of life we're in now. We are all in on our faith, because without it, the world seems too dark to function. And so when I can just be a human, I don't really know. And it's funny because when you help someone, you're like, I didn't even know I would be able to help you. I just showed up as a sister and as a woman and as a friend to say, I'm here. Even as a fellow widow, I can't understand what you went through, but I'm here. And I'm sorry, and I don't have the perfect words to say, but I love you. And I can tell you from someone who's a little further down the grief road, we're going to survive it. Doesn't mean it's okay. Doesn't mean that it makes sense. Doesn't mean that it's not ruining your life, but you're going to be okay in certain ways and in a new 2.0 version of who you are. You're never going to be old Danielle. I never get to be old Ashley. I never get the love of my life back. I have a man who stands by me and makes space for him, which is amazing. We celebrate Buddy and Rebel on Father's Day. We celebrate Buddy's birthday. At Christmas time, we talk about Buddy. All the time, he's part of the conversation. And, Rebel teases Reagan and like, ooh, if your daddy could see you, he makes space for that. And that's, I think, where I just ultimately fell in love with him, is he said, I love you, all of you, the broken pieces, the whole parts of you. But like the more you get to know people, and I don't know if you and your sweetheart are in this phase yet, though, we're all just broken people trying to forge through. And I'm trying so desperately to be the light that I don't always even feel or know myself. And so I never want someone else to hurt who's around me. I'm like almost like a John Coffey. Like I want to get it right from the Green Mile. I just feel it and I just want to take it away from somebody. And I have to remember to let it out too. My husband said, don't forget to release those flies sometimes too, because you are a John Coffey. And he said, but you got to remember that your little heart needs to heal too. And so I'm just this broken vessel who's trying to show up as a woman to support the people around me.
But see, you know what? And I resonate with that. And I love that explanation so much because number one, I'm an empath.
Yes.
Which means I take it all in.
All of it.
Number two, not only having gone through the grief journey, but being in recovery, this podcast launching on my 6 years of sobriety, I always say that I love broken people, right? Broken people, we are more resilient and more patient and more kind. And because we had to fight to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And people who consider themselves normal haven't had to experience the really, really hard in order to really appreciate the really beautiful high of joy, because the dichotomy between the two is really something. And listening to you talk about releasing it and taking it in, I always think like, I'm okay that I'm a little bit broken because it does leave space for the light to shine through. And it's more important for you to show up for me to show up for you, and for anyone else to be able to sit in that space with someone and say, I'm here, I see you. I'm not trying to barge in and turn on the lights and say, I know how to make it better. It's more about me saying, I see it, I get it, I can't take it away, but it's temporary.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time I was going through that level of grief, it didn't feel temporary.
No, it feels so permanent because your life's done. It's done. That part of your life is officially done.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because this podcast has been in my brain. I owned the domain for 5 years.
Oh.
And I was in the process of working towards planning it, getting it on air when Marty passed away. And it's always had the same name. It's always been Hope Comes to Visit. And I remember sitting by myself at one point thinking, who are you to talk about hope? But really? And what I have since learned is that I needed to sit in a place very firmly without it in order to do the podcast. In order to be equipped to talk to people about it, I needed to know what it felt like to live in a space where it didn't feel like it was there. Because hope is an ever-changing, ever-evolving, ever-morphing emotion. And I thought going through recovery, I thought having gone through those hard times that I was clear on hope. I had it in a tattoo. It's always been one of my favorite words, but I didn't know.
And for me, it worked both ways. Not only did it say, this is something that's going to propel me forward, but I had to do the same thing you did, Danielle. It's crazy because looking back, God was in the weaving of my career as a criminologist too. I was dead set on FBI, didn't happen. I was dead set on studying why do certain cases go cold and certain ones don't, very analytical. And that mother walked in and said, I need to know what happened to my daughter. And that's what changed my path to start talking to survivors and family members of violent crime. And all of my research looks at how those people process grief and trauma, and then practical recommendations for practitioners, police, and families to heal from that trauma. I too remember got in the car and thanked Jesus Christ that I did not know what that pain was like every time I finished an interview with a family. And then when Buddy died, I was so paralyzed in everything that I had lost that the only thing I needed to do was be a scholar and go back to my own research and look and say, what did I tell these other families to do? I told them to get professional help. You cannot handle grief and trauma alone. I have a beautiful marriage now, and we're realizing you have to process the old junk, all the stuff that's happening, and the current traumas that are happening in your life, or you just stay in that space. And so to move forward, you have to clear out some of that stuff. I had told my families that. I did it. I'm still doing it. I told them that you can't hang your hope and inspiration and faith on what needs to happen. You have to find it where you're at. And that's not easy, right? Because they would say, well, when the case gets solved, when we go to trial, when I know who did it. What if you don't? What if you don't?
That's the maybe, right?
Yes.
That's the I must live in certainty, and we can't live in certainty because we don't know for sure what's going to happen. So being able to find that beauty in the maybe, leading back to my friend, and I think that it takes practice.
Daily practice.
It takes practice. It takes self-awareness. It takes a willingness to say, I want this life, right? What is your definition of hope?
Oh, my definition of hope is that that everything's going to be okay. That's my ultimate hope. And okay in the way it's meant to be, which might be grander than my design. So I like to hold God's hand with my issues. Mm-hmm. That's not what we're supposed to do. So I'm in this space in my life where my hope and my prayer daily is to release those things to God and trust I'm going to keep showing up. I'm going to keep trying to do what I think is right. And I am trying to trust that I can give that to you and to exist in the bigger plan. I want to exist in the bigger plan. That's my hope. I'm not always there. So, but honestly, my own personal hope is just to learn to be and to be present and to say joy is all around us if we'll look for it in the right spot, and that goodness will continue to come our way. It might not look the way I want. It might not be timed the way I want, but that's not what I signed up for. I signed up to show up and be there for my family and to trust God to take care of me. He's been there even when I didn't look for him. And so I'm trying to learn to fully do that and to hope in that promise he made for me, which is keep showing up. Come to me. I will wrap my arms closer to you. You draw closer to me. I'll draw closer to you. And so I'm on that journey. I'm not perfect, Danielle. I'm been a woman of faith for 41 years and I'm still learning. I'm still begging for him to just allow me to mess up and keep coming back.
Well, there's beauty in that, right? So my faith is a little different than yours. It's definitely, definitely doesn't have the depth and strength that yours does. I've had, my faith has been shaken by some trauma within the church.
Yes, spiritual abuse, absolutely.
Yes. And so I'll leave that there for now. But that being said, I truly admire deeply people who are able to sit so firmly and comfortably and peacefully in their faith as you do. And I'm always wondering how do you keep it from shaking? How do you, when you do face challenges, when you do, what do you,
not well.
How do you stay rooted?
Not well. So I'm being very vulnerable here. I'll be very honest.
No, vulnerability is beautiful. Yeah, thank you.
Part of my testimony is that I'm not that person yet. I want to be her. It's funny. Our lesson in church on Sunday was that when you really put your faith in Christ and you truly are there, that you do feel a joy. It's internal. Joy is not happiness. Those are two very different things, right? Joy is that internal peace and presence and knowing that it's there. Even when, right, Jesus didn't promise that life was easy, didn't promise that we would have a golden ticket when we believed in him. He actually told us it would get harder, right? But that we would never have to do life alone. And so I will tell you, not a joke, the moment I found Rebel, the moment we tried to blend our family, we have lost access to children. We have had all kinds of issues with blended families and things like that, attacks in court, all kinds of things that have they've rocked not just my faith, but my inner peace and my mental health. And same for my daughter and for my husband. And so in those moments, I experience anger and lose control and act out of turn where I'm not the woman of faith, or I'm not as sturdy in my faith as I should be. Because if I was, you just sit back and say, that's fine. Got a bigger guy on my side, right? Like all of it's going to be okay. But earthly things are real. They matter.
Oh, absolutely.
So like when you're struggling financially, when you're responding to a false claim against you, when you're trying to defend the safety of your children, I do not have the rock under me that I need to rely on. I go a little berserk too. We just had technical issues that made me lose control right a minute ago. So I know what I should be doing as a woman of faith. And I know that the promise is right here. Ash, I told you what to do. Just keep coming back and trying again. But I fall daily. It's one of those things. We're in therapy and in support because our family has been hurt multiple times by different things. And it seems like no matter how hard we work, no matter how good we try to be to the people around us, there continue to be worldly things that happen. Every person has them, whether they'll share them or not, right? We are not alone in that. The more vulnerable and the more we share, we find out, oh, you've been through the same thing. I thought we were alone in that, right? Mm-hmm. But it still rocks the human flesh part of you. I am a human being. And so daily I make issues. I say things, I behave in a way that does not show what the truth is, that I know in my head. I am a child of God. I know I'm safe. I know my family is safe. I know there's a bigger plan. I know I can't control all of these things. I know that if I just handed it to him, I'd probably be a lot healthier and happier. But
I think you need to give yourself a smidge more grace.
Well, that is also true.
Because considering all of the things that you do handle on a day-to-day basis, I don't necessarily think that you nor I should be striving for perfection.
Right? Won't happen.
And I don't want it to be that way, right? I mean, if I'm perfect, I'm removing the chaos of life, and the chaos is where I find a lot of the crazy, beautiful adventure.
That's where I found the best connections with human beings too. One of my best faith sisters, the thing we connect with most is when we stumble. It's like, oh my Lord, have mercy, right? Like this just happened, or hey, this is going on, or I'm just real, and she's real back. And I said, thank you for not being the person who presents it as not having issues. I can't relate to that woman of faith right now. That's not someone that I relate to. I look up and admire like you do, where I say, wow, I want to be there one day, where it's like, that's okay. No problem, right? It's all in God's hands. It is. I know that here, but I still am a human being. I still react and I still struggle and he knows that. If I didn't need him in the first place.
I'd rather laugh through the struggle with you, I think.
Yes.
I'd rather do the best I can to find the humor and the camaraderie in the joint experience.
Yes.
But
and to share the joys that come. I mean, like, Then I have to stop and say, look around you, because you lost this, you got this. My daughter says today, do you know if we hadn't lost Daddy, I would have never gotten Rebel. Do you know if we hadn't lost Daddy, we would have never met Teddy, which is our baby, right? And she goes, that's crazy. That if not for this now, even my husband would tell you, if I could rewind and give you back that life you had built with him, I would in a heartbeat. And I said, but that's not even a potential on the table. So look at, because of our grief and loss of an amazing human being that is forever in my heart and world. Because of that loss, I went off and I started my own business, which I never would have tried. May or may not work. It's financially really hard right now. May or may not work, but I did it because we lost Buddy, and because people hurt me in between that, right? And after that, romantically and things like that, took advantage of me. I knew when I met and found Rebel, someone who was vulnerable and honest and loving, and his family was his number one purpose. His faith was something he was building and working on. I saw someone who I wanted in my life, not perfect, not without issues, not without trauma that he was bringing in too, but we looked at each other and we chose each other.
Exactly.
To say, and we choose each other daily because it's a challenge. Life is a challenge. But I choose you. I want to do life with you because of the understanding we have of each other. And those things wouldn't be possible. I am literally, Danielle, about to step into, so college professor, children's book author, still get to be a little bit of a college professor at Ole Miss as an adjunct professor. But in August, I'm going to be stepping into a second grade classroom.
I love it.
And hugging on the littles all day. And we really, as a family, had to sit back and say, the shop is not as successful as it's been economically, right? My husband said, I will not let you lose it. It's important. It's something that our family needs and your heart built. We are going to keep it open as long as possible. So he actually runs the store full time for us. And it's crazy because if it's not me, who better to brag and love on the shop about my children's books than my husband?
Right.
But we decided, he said, can you imagine what your heart is going to feel when you're in a grade where they focus on reading and literature and you have kiddos who are old enough to be kind of independent, but they need you. And he said, the light you can bring to those children, the way you can be an example of faith and hope and joy for kids who don't always have it when they go home.
And
so I think
they will pour into you as well. I'm thrilled for you. You have been such a delight. I'm so excited to have you on here. Thank you.
Thank you
for doing this with me. I want to ask you as a final question.
Yes.
Is there any wisdom, if you could gather people in front of you, what would you say in terms of a willingness to grow, evolve, have faith? What would you tell people?
I would say validate your current experience. Right? Sit in it, like you said. You cannot escape issues, grief, trauma. You can't escape it. It's part of your DNA now. But it also has the ability to turn into something that can have joy in it, laced in it. It will not be perfect. I don't care how strong your faith is. I don't care how strong your sobriety is. I don't care. Life happens. It's not fun. Okay. There's a lot of things that aren't fun. So validate that. That's okay. It is not always I'm blessed and highly favored. I am blessed and highly favored. And I'm really struggling right now with this. My heart is really hurting because of this. My feelings are hurt over this. I feel betrayed because of this. Those are real life experiences. So you can validate those and feel them. They are part of your DNA too. But then you have to have the courage and the fight to not stay there, because those are your two options. Do you want to stay in the darkness and hang out in it? Or do you want to feel and validate the darkness and then figure out how to light it up a little bit, right? A little bit. So I always got a candle burning. Sometimes it's brighter than others, but I will not sit in the darkness and utter darkness. I won't. There's too many other things. When I get in my head and I get down and I get depressed, it happens to all of us. I look and I say, look at what you do have. You have a roof over your head anybody would beg for. You have food on the table. Your belly's never hungry. You have a daughter who worships you, who loves you, who needs you. You better be an example you want her to be, right? You have a husband who has sacrificed significantly and loved you through all of it and allows you to love him through his. It's a huge blessing. You have a guardian angel, right? You have all of these things. You have opportunities that other people would beg for. Your worst day, no matter who you are, your worst day, there's someone begging for that. Right? The mother who couldn't have a child ever, the person who never found love again or never found love in the first place. So when I get dark, I say, shame on you a little bit, where I validate it. This is real, but shame on you for staying here, because at some point you need to bring your light back. And so do that. Validate the feeling. Quit saying it's like either move on, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. That happens, but in time. So feel the feels. It's real. Validate that. Figure out how you instantly will look for the joy in the darkness. And even if it's a little flicker, as long as there's a little flicker, you're okay. It's all a chapter, right? I always say, like, you know what? This is a chapter, which means guess what? It doesn't end here. You get to turn the page and go to a new chapter. So wait for your next chapter. Put the effort in to get to the next chapter, right? You actually have to turn the page. It doesn't fall in your lap. And when the chapter doesn't go the way you want, be the author of your own story. Write something different. I'm pivoting all the time. That is not in my MO. I'm a planner. I'm a control freak. But I keep saying, you know what? Didn't like how that chapter went. We're going to change it. We're going to rewrite it. Oh, didn't like that part. Going to pull this character and keep him, but get rid of this. So when you don't like the way your story's going, rewrite it and find one that is full of joy and hope. And if that doesn't work, pick up the pen and do it again.
You are extraordinary. Thank you for being here with me, for sharing so much wisdom and so much heart and so much hope.
Thank you.
It was wonderful to have you here.
I am so grateful for you, Danielle, and I'm proud of you. Congratulations on your new podcast. And oh my goodness, our guardian angel is super proud of us.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Thank you, our viewership, for being here with us today. I so hope this visit brought you a little bit of light, a little comfort, or a little courage for your day. If our conversation touched you in any way, I so hope you will turn right around and share it with someone you think needs it right now. And I definitely hope that you will take the time to come back and visit us again. Thank you for being here. I'm incredibly grateful to the people who support and sponsor the podcast. Sometimes life takes a sharp turn, and when it does, having someone steady in your corner can make all the difference. Chris Dully is a trusted St. Louis attorney who personally guides his clients through criminal defense cases with clarity, compassion, and experience. From traffic violations to serious charges, he shows up fully and directly. Call 314-384-4000 or 314-DUI-HELP, or you can visit dullylawfirm.com for a free consultation.